Good morning, Grand
Good,
Rising.
good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Happy Sunday,
How?
Mr. Riley.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
How are you feeling this first Sunday of October?
I'm actually feeling good. I'm actually feeling really good, despite the inevitable of the season
Oh,
and the time. I'm feeling good though. I mean, I like fall to a
okay.
degree. I like it to a degree.
Just
I
to a
do
degree.
to a
Just to a
degree.
degree. Yeah.
You get to flex your sweaters and your leather jackets and your
Yeah.
boots and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Fall
your
is, I
s-
mean, in
your
terms of dress wear, fall is like the best. Like to me,
yeah,
it's the best.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
I love
I
I
agree.
I love sweaters. I'm like Bill Cosby like that. I love,
But
you know,
is that like still a thing?
uh
Bill Cosby special. Anyway, especially Bill Cosby. Listen, okay, all right. We're going down the rabbit hole.
no, you actually went down. I wasn't gonna follow you
I
though. I was
went
like,
down
you
the
a joke.
rabbit hole. Yeah.
I wasn't. I was just saying that I love sweaters and sweaters. The fall allows me to, flex my sweaters.
Yeah,
Because I like sweaters
absolutely.
and stuff.
Well,
Yo.
that is not the topic of today, but yes, but our topic is about pleasure and, wearing the sweaters you love, the seasons you love, the things
Yeah.
that bring us joy, that bring us
And
just
fall is
this
pretty
feeling.
too. Fall
Yeah.
is
Oh, well, fall
pretty.
is gorgeous. Fall is really
Fall
gorgeous.
is
Yeah, there's a lot
pretty.
of really good things about fall. I admit.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like it.
Fall is pretty.
But stop taking us down that rabbit hole. We gotta, cause we on a time constraint today. We really on a time constraint today. Yeah, I
Yeah,
gotta.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, but
We
we're
got to get
talking.
into the feel good topic.
You got to get into the feel good. So, welcome everybody. If you're watching in live time, we always love having you here. So, thank you. This is Spiritual Shift. This is our YouTube and Facebook live discussions that we do every first and third Sunday of the month at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for coming back and watching the recording. Thanks for watching that. Um, we do this. We just talk about a variety of topics that relate to our spirituality and our spiritual growth and development, and we attempt to go a little bit out of the box, just to create and present different perspectives that maybe the mainstream isn't so much talking about, or maybe it's kind of resonating in your head, but you've been a little bit sketchy about maybe digging in. We decided to curate a space that's safe and to talk about this stuff. So today's topic question, although we're, when we thought about it, we're like, well, what we really mean, and we're going to get into that. But the way we have posed it is, what is pleasure to you? What is pleasure to you? So we would love if you're watching it, whether it's live or it's in the recording, to put in the comments what pleasure is to you. Just that statement without a lot of context. Just what does that mean to you? But I don't know, Barry, do you want to kind of really give context what we mean as we're asking this question? What is it that we're really asking?
Well, since this is spiritual shift, and of course we were thinking of it as it pertains to spirituality.
Mhm.
So when I think you came up with the topic, you were like, pleasure. What is pleasure? And I was like, that's perfect. That is a perfect. That's a really good way to talk about spirituality from a particular angle. Lots of people don't think spirituality, even like church people, Christians, and stuff like that. They don't think pleasure when they think of going to church or going to worship. They don't think of pleasure in the
Now,
mix of that.
hold on.
So
Okay, so I'm gonna just hold on. Maybe some people do, I think though, again, defining the word
I don't
pleasure,
think
what
they
do we
do. I don't think they do. So I'm gonna explain it. I'm gonna explain it. We're gonna get into it. I don't think they do. No, 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 no,
Barry
no,
and Kenya disagree. Okay.
no,
Anyway,
no,
I
no.
think there is a context of pleasure that I think most people who are going and who are regularly devoted to the way they practice their faith um aspire for a pleasure. Now,
Yeah, I
how
would
we
agree with that.
okay, all right.
I would agree
Okay.
with
So
that.
how we
I
really
would agree.
define pleasure, and is this true pleasure or is this obligatory pleasure?
Right.
That
I
is
would
where
agree
I
with
would
that.
kind of
I would
go.
agree.
But
I would
keep
agree
going.
with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with that. So when it comes so the reason why I say that this is such a great topic is because um the whole concept of pleasure has been pushed kind of like out of the conversation of spirituality and even divine pursuits because of how um religion has pushed it out and said, well, this is kind of um, what you should be focusing on, and this should make you feel good, or this should
Right.
give you some pleasure.
Right.
And the two don't necessarily meet. So, um, and I would say to give Christianity credit, Christianity is probably the closest to just some expressions, some um, even concept of experiencing pleasure, um, like Islam and Judaism. Well, I'll say with Islam, the regular practice, the regular everyday, you just don't look at it and say, "Wow, that just feels so good." It just, let me. It just like when you look at it, it doesn't. As opposed to when you're doing things. So I was giving you the example as we were prepping. I said when you look at little kids and they're playing whatever they're doing, they're outside playing on the swings or they're running around and they're just laughing and falling down. I mean, they are experiencing something that is joyous and amazing. Now, take that snapshot and then superimpose it over whatever practice of religion or spirituality that you want. Is like, can you say, well, man, those kids are having fun, it's just a lot of greatness and just pleasure. Now then look at the other thing and say, okay, what's going on there? Like, can you say that the practice of certain religions, when you look at certain practices, or what does it look like they're experiencing pleasure? Now
Right.
I say Christianity is probably the closest, because you have the experience of when you have certain experiences where people can experience pleasure, what seems like pleasure, what they may experience as pleasure. I don't know
Yeah.
if
Hmm.
I don't know if a lot of Christians really interpret it that way, but that's really the gateway. This is gonna sound crazy, I know.
I was gonna
That is
say,
really the
uh-oh,
gateway.
Imma
No,
chime
pleasure.
in a minute. Hold on, but
Hold
keep
up,
going,
hold up,
keep
hold
going,
up,
keep
hold up.
going, keep going.
But the thing
Yes.
is that what Christians don't really talk about, what they don't
What
push, they
some
don't push.
Christians, let's say
Some
some.
Christians,
Yeah,
some
not all.
Christians,
Yeah.
they don't push the envelope and say, like, when you're experiencing, say, like you're catching the Holy Ghost, or when you are speaking in tongues, or when you are really caught up in a sermon when the preacher's preaching, that is really the gateway to pleasure, divine pleasure, divine ecstasy in the pursuit of a divine spiritual life. That's the gateway of it. It's
You're
like
saying you're
you're like right at the beginning of it, because
okay.
because
Can I
pleasure
can I come
pleasure
in? Can I
One more
come
second.
in? Okay,
10
one
seconds.
more. All
10
right.
seconds.
That's it,
Pl-
because I got to come and
pleasure,
interrupt. We gonna disagree today. Uh-huh.
pleasure is can be the gateway to spirituality, to a divine ecstasy. It can be. It's just one way. All right, go ahead.
No, I don't really disagree. I do want to put some semantics and language and be more inclusive and because it's really important for me when we do spiritual shift to not feel as though we are preaching something that this is what it is, and or to be, I want us to be inclusive. I want, whether you practice Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever it is that you do, to feel at home here and be able to experience another an additional perspective and not feel slighted, and that was a little ouchy, and so I will say this. I do think that this is why I wanted to talk about this, because there's a lot of ouchy in this. Because first we have to define, what does pleasure even mean? Like, what does that even mean? And because I do think pleasure is an incredibly subjective situation. Okay. It's subjective in terms of particularly how we present it in mainstream society. Um, I think that some people associate pleasure with sex, and that is the connotation, sexuality or sex and physical, that's pleasure. That's some people. I think some people equate pleasure as, just contentment and joy, and that's a context. I think some people see pleasure as guilt, like, can't be too, that's, you have to be careful if we have too much pleasure, so it can become this kind of weird, intimidating, even maybe space. So I think with all of those things ciphering around and these thoughts, then we say, let's go to the church and experience pleasure. It's like, where do we, where do we go with that? And I think, what you were talking about, the gateway, like experiencing tongues and experiencing, feeling like the Holy Ghost or the Spirit is inside. For some, that is a gateway, maybe, of divine pleasure. For others, it may be a release. For others, it may be a sense of just finally feeling present. So pleasure has this interesting thing, but what the reason why I wanted to bring it up, though, is because I think too many maybe equate pleasure to be something that we have to somewhat be careful about, and that we don't necessarily prioritize it, not just in our everyday, but in our spiritual life. Do we prioritize pleasure in our spirituality? Are we doing things, getting closer to God? Are we, in a way that's obligatory? Or are we doing it in a way that's pleasurable, and that in fact is centered within how I understand pleasure? And that's
Mhm.
in my brain why I want to talk about, because I think when it comes to religion and spirituality, I feel like people sometimes will wrestle and say, well, I'm more spiritual because it feels more pleasurable. Like, it feels a little less restraining. It feels a little
Mhm.
bit more less intimidating. It feels a little more like, well, I'm spiritual. I believe in God. I'm good. But I don't know if I'm over there with all this, because I sometimes wonder if that pleasure factor gets in a weird position,
Weird
and
stuff.
that, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
mean, and I definitely agree with everything that you said. I wanted so let me reframe some of the things that I said. And actually all of the three major Western religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they all have significant aspects of um, pleasure processes, or pleasure ways to experience divine ecstasy, pleasure in their particular religion. It's not really taught a lot in the traditional ways. You have to really seek it out in
Mhm.
all of them. But I
Mhm.
think I think we are fundamentally pleasure. I don't want to say pleasure seekers. That doesn't
Well,
sound
I
right.
do think I do. Well,
I
I
think
think it's, I don't
go
think
ahead.
that's bad. I was
I
gonna
mean, I don't
say,
want to say that we're pleasure seekers because that just sounds bad to me.
well, well,
But
well,
go ahead.
I want to break it down. No, because okay, so I'm gonna get a little more into how my belief system is. So let me give that context. This is my belief system, all right? So to me, here we are in this flesh, this human, and this soul is embodied, and it's using this particular life, Kenya, flesh, to experience evolution. To me, this ego, human self, which is nothing wrong with this. If I'm going to experience all these things, there better be a matter of pleasure or desire, or I won't be necessarily willing to keep navigating. And I think it's when we lose pleasure. This is how critical pleasure is. When we lose it, this to me is when we get in these weird relationships, when we get in these situations where we don't prioritize ourselves, where we begin to, even with religion or what have you, where we get stagnant in it and we don't ask the questions, we don't get curious because we have now decided that pleasure isn't as important. And so now it keeps us, whereas when those of us, when I have a sense of pleasure moving in my life, I'm more eager to seek whatever, to seek love, to seek God, to seek protection, anything, because I feel the win,
Right,
WIN. And I,
right,
I do think that we are pleasure seekers. And I think we have to stop minimizing how vital how vital pleasure actually does play into our life, and
right.
not guilt it and not try to restrict it and refrain from it, not abuse it, because I think that's the problem is people, the moderation of it, or the I'm all about pleasure and I'm not doing anything unless it pleases me. And that's, I
Right.
think, with children come in the world with that energy. And then I know as a parent, you have to start guiding. It's like, okay, I know you want to have fun all day. And I actually really want you to have a lot of fun. But there's points we have to take a bit of a break and we have to prioritize how we do the day so that we still have fun, but that we do some other things that maybe are not so fun to you today. But that's okay because we're going to still have fun ultimately. And I think that's the beauty of a child is that they're fully in their pleasure seeking selves. And unfortunately, I think as adults we do this to children and we don't give them the balance so
Mhm.
that they can appreciate pleasure and always seek it, but know how to prioritize it in a way where at times they can also experience other things that maybe are
Yeah.
not as pleasurable.
Yeah, pleasure is, I mean, I would agree with you 99.9, 99.99999%.
99.999.
I
Okay,
mean, and the
thank
only
you.
thing, I mean, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. The thing that I would add is that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. You can't get like pleasure. There's a double side to pleasure. There's a double sidedness to pleasure, and this
Yes.
is there is definitely um, some talk of this in mystical documents, mystical teachings, mystical stuff. There's talk of that. Yes, we are pleasure, like we have the ability to experience pleasure to a profound extent
Yes.
for the most part.
Yes.
And there's nothing for the most part, there's nothing wrong with that for the most part. The double-sidedness of it is that um pleasure also can distract you.
Yeah.
You can get
Yeah.
just caught up in, oh, this, I just want to feel this way all the time, so this is what I'm gonna be doing all the time. And I think that that is the challenge, or I don't know, we have to figure out, I think that the challenge is to figure out a way to get people experiencing, discovering pleasure in their life. And it could
Yeah.
be, the biggest things that we like to talk about our sex, food,
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
what
Food.
else? What
Yeah.
else? Sex and food
Well, sex, food,
and
shopping, social
shopping,
media. I think
traveling, stuff like that. It's
well,
like
you're hitting on a good point. You're because you say the traveler. Yeah, that's I'm gonna take that pleasure all day. It's
I
never
am
too much.
too. Absolutely. It's never too much traveling. You
Never too much.
cannot get over traveled. I just
Right.
travel too much. I'm addicted
Right.
to traveling.
Right,
No.
right. Well,
Be
some people, but
addicted.
so this is
Be
okay. So you're
addicted to
hitting,
traveling. Be
you're
addicted to
no,
traveling.
no, because you're hitting on something that I wanted to bring up when you were just describing. I was like, oh, this is what we need to maybe put another frame in, is toxic pleasure versus healthy
Toxic
pleasure.
pleasure. Yeah,
And
that's the thing.
so, yeah, and I think when we're using pleasure as a way to avoid very important things that we need to do that in fact will give us more meaning and more value and be able to contribute to a deeper, longer sense of or having longevity in pleasure without it becoming toxic. I mean, I think so. So, for instance, like if sex is pleasurable, and yes, it should be, in my opinion, a part of adults' livelihoods in some shape or form, whether that's with a partner, with self, whatever. It's a bodily, it's something that our human expression has. It's a gift, to a certain degree of pleasure. And, as a woman, now I really have to, as a woman, our anatomy, some of our anatomy is purely only for pleasure. It's not for the reproduction, it's not to do a bodily like function. It is purely for the matter of physical pleasure. And I think and if we're all gonna say we're made from a higher source or God or whatever, and to be given this gift that is purely for pleasure, we have to understand how fundamental pleasure becomes. The problem to me is that we're not able to prioritize and moderate. And like you're saying, we get in an addictive situation, which is to me the ego gone amok, basically. The ego meaning the human, not, it taking over what soul could help to balance. And so I think because when we deprive ourselves, the human response is to double down and overdo, because now that it's just like when we, okay, I ain't gonna eat no more cookies ever again, but I love cookies, but I'm never gonna eat it. And so then the moment I get a cookie, well, I ate the whole bag. I ate the whole thing because we didn't moderate and give ourselves a bit of cookie, in a moderate amount of time. You know what I mean? That's
Go
the
ahead, take that cookie. Just a little bit of cookie. Go take that cookie,
And see,
girl.
that cookie can go a lot of ways when we talk about pleasure. But anyway, but yes,
Yeah.
so I think that, toxic pleasure versus healthy pleasure, we need a lot of healthy pleasure. And
Right.
healthy pleasure
Right.
to me is that when we prioritize um different things in our lives that allow us to be productive and allow us to be vibrant and allow us to feel really connected to self, which ultimately is soul, which to me is why it does become a spiritual matter. Because in fact, pleasing that core of ourself is pleasing the soul. It is pleasing the soul. So, but there's many ways to do that, and I'll just say this and I'll pass it over to you. And we only got about 5-10 minutes, but anyway, I'll say this. I my the work that I do with women and the work that I'm really, even as an artist, the work that I do as even a creative is, I want you to experience a sense of pleasure on your terms, and it be one that you can relish in, at the same time reflect and work on the heart ish. That I want you to be able to have that much pleasure in your life that you're willing to work on the hard ish. I'm trying not to say the bad word, the hard stuff, because you got the good pleasure on the other side. But if all I have is the hard and I don't have the win, I don't know how to navigate pleasure in my life, this hard becomes suffocating. Hard for me now is it's hard, but it's not the all. because I have a lot of other pleasure. I have a lot of other really good things that are really in alignment with me. So I'll take the hard, you know? So that's why I think, and the last thing, and I'll give it to you, promise,
No, take your time.
is we have to be careful with our faith walk, because I feel as though many communities of organized religion create an obligatory sense of pleasure. You must do this to feel good. You must not do this to be a better person. That might feel good, but you must not. But that's just it. You just must not. We're not going to
Right.
really explore the must not why. Just know that the devil or something bad or is just not good is going to happen to you. And I think that then gives this sense, this false sense of pleasure. It's like I shouldn't feel obligated. I should, in fact, feel, ooh, I seek it more because my core seeks it, not because mom told me or everybody is going to judge me if I don't. So that's my sermon on pleasure today.
Hallelujah. The doors of the
Hallelujah.
church,
The doors of the church are open.
doors of the church are open.
So, yeah.
Amen. Hallelujah. I totally agree with everything, Pastor, that you have said this morning on this. Um,
Those
I
of
want
you
to
who are
just
watching, I put in the comments anything if you like. I can't see all the comments though, so you might be commenting. I just can't see it. But go ahead, babe. Go
um,
ahead.
I just want to drop this, and I know we don't have time to talk about this. We don't even have time to talk about this. So, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna
not
drop it.
today.
I'm gonna
Okay.
drop it, and then we'll have to double back and
Yes.
discuss it at a later date. But you mentioned that women have, like, something, in their body that is specifically for pleasure, right?
And
So
we can call it, it's a clitoris. Yes. Just call
right,
it what it is. Yeah, we're
right,
grown
right.
here. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Um, but in the same vein of that, we have, 7 main chakras in our body, and those chakras, um, this the whole concept of our chakra system, and there's 7 main ones. We have lots more chakras in our bodies, main ones, and then some minor ones, and
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff. And these
Hmm.
chakras go from the main chakras. They go from our feet all the way up to the crown of our head, and they are in our bodies. In one of the functions, they're directly related to us physically, in the physical world, as well as they help us experience things in the physical world. Much of that experience is pleasure, you
Right.
know
Right.
and then they also help us experience things that are above the physical world, like what's understood as the metaphysical world, right?
Right.
So let's just take our root chakra, which is in the soles of our feet, right? So we're talking about experiencing pleasure, and there's all different, like we've said, we focus on sex, food, shopping, like, you know
Social
something that we can,
media,
social media, like all this kind of stuff, right? But if you have,
dating,
yeah,
relationships, people.
right,
Yeah.
right. So you have a root chakra that's in your foot, and how many people actually take their shoes off, take their socks off, and walk around in the grass,
Right.
um, on a nice day, and just feel that groundedness and feel what that feels like? Me personally, I stay in sandals in the summertime, right? And I'm always taking my shoes off and walking barefoot. Is
Right.
on some grass, on some sand, and there's a sensation that you get when you do that.
Right.
Um, is that not correct? Maybe it doesn't happen for
No,
everybody.
I I
I,
I think
I don't think
I
it,
think
it
you're
may not happen for everybody, but that is a that's
that's
that's what I'm saying.
absolutely a sense of pleasure.
It's a
Yeah.
sense of pleasure.
And I'm glad
So
you brought up the chakras. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think,
no,
I mean, I brought up that, I don't want people just to be thinking, well, the clitoris is the only thing that gives us pleasure, because it's not at all. I think, I mean, but I was using that as example that it is a part of our anatomy that actually was only built for that. Most of our anatomy, we have everything built in our bodies, the physical of it, for a function. and that function for that is actually pleasure.
It's just
um
pleasure.
yeah, and but the chakras too are, I mean, they're, that's a whole, yeah, that's a whole thing, because they're not only built for the pleasure, but they're built for the balance, and they're built to have a sense of, so we can have a sense of alignment in many ways. Like it gets really deep when you really start digging in. And so yes, when you're walking barefoot, you're creating physical contact to ignite the chakra, so that not only is it pleasure, but it's rooting you in a way so that you're in alignment, so that you can experience these other things in life that will allow you, you know, to afford you. So pleasure is like this trigger to get us in position for experience. You know what I mean? It's like it kind of pivot, it puts us in so that the experience can do this. So if we're not experiencing pleasure, we're never being kind of set in the space of flow and flourish, you know. And so to me, this is why pleasure becomes so important spiritually, because if you're wanting to go on this spiritual journey and you feel obligated, or you feel guilted out of it, or you feel scared to death that something horrible will happen to you if you don't, where's the pleasure? Where's the pleasure? Whereas if you go into it with a mindset of, I'm ready for renewal. I'm ready to actually, these things inside that I want for my life, I'm ready for them to actually happen for me. And so let's approach spirituality and development from that stance and find the pleasure. So that's why I create retreats. Let's go
Right.
somewhere. Let's connect to nature. Let's bond. Let's have fun while we do this heavier work, so
Right.
that I'm motivated to do it. You
Right.
know,
Right.
that's why
Right.
children have so much play. That's why it's important to incorporate play in education, so that they're motivated to keep it, to keep going. There's nothing worse than sitting in a class and just, oh, we just gonna work. We we're not gonna have no kind of fun at all. Play is a critical part of our wiring. So chakra, yeah.
Chakra, yeah.
Chakra, yeah. I know I kind of went off today.
No, Pastor, I'm telling you, you preaching today. I'm here. I'm here for it.
I kind of went
You
off.
preaching today. Um, no, but
Any, yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to get ready to wrap up because I have a master class to attend focused on pleasure. Yes,
huh,
darling.
right.
I'm getting my
Yeah, I mean
pleasure on.
you pretty much said everything. I mean, pleasure, everything that we could talk about right now in this little short amount of time. But yeah, pleasure is the it's always an exchange of energy, you know. And it's helpful to focus on the good, the pleasure that's not toxic, and then the pleasure that you can use to renew, to restore. um, and pleasure is at the center of my, like, my teaching and my curriculum with young people. The system and the process that I take kids through to develop themselves, pleasure is at the core of it.
Yes,
You know, connecting
yes.
them to their passion, what they love to do. Like, we can't even go nowhere until you connect to your pleasure. Like,
Right,
what is it that you love to do that your
right,
mama, your daddy does not have to scream at you to go do? Like, what is it, that thing that you're doing? You know,
right,
so
right.
we can't even go any further until you connect to that pleasure first. Then once you
Absolutely.
connect to that, now we can have
Now
some
we can
teaching.
go. And
Now we can
that's,
go.
yes, and
But
that's what
until
I
you
was
do that,
talking about. It's, and
right?
so my offering to anyone listening to this, and we're going to talk more about literal offerings we have, but just kind of a soul offering I have to you is, you really need to sit down. We all have to sit down and reflect on, where does pleasure exist in our lives, and how do we in fact prioritize on a regular pleasure? How do we incorporate that in our life? Do we overdo it? Is it a toxic space, like, where that's all, we don't have nothing but just pleasure, 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 that we lose the sense of responsibilities, that we neglect ourselves in all these other ways, or other people? And, you know, is it there? Is it, I can't tell you the last time I had some pleasure. I had some cookies yesterday and some, fried fish. That was my pleasure. Or my pleasure is only in the form of fried fish and banana pudding. That is the only place I really feel my pleasure. Or
Right.
my pleasure is only when I'm out on these dating streets and I'm on, Bumble and all the apps. And that's the only place I feel like I'm having some fun in my life. Because otherwise I don't really have no fun. We have to be willing to get honest. You don't need to post that. You don't need to tell me. You don't need to tell Barry. You don't tell the kids. You don't need to tell your pastor. You don't need to tell nobody. You need to tell yourself. You and higher source, God, whatever that is, y'all need to have a meeting. Okay, so that you can begin to flesh out, how can I create a, a part of pleasure in my life that in fact serves me, so that I actually do the harder things, because I have a sense of pleasure otherwise in my life. And so I'm willing to take the time to do the hard stuff. So I'm going to let you talk more. You just kind of alluded, tell people how, because what you said about kids, because I'm a parent, I'm watching it in live time every day. When my kids tap into things that they love, there's no stopping them. They go hard.
They
They are
go
successful.
hard,
They go hard
hard.
and they
They go
do
hard.
amazing.
Right.
They do
Right.
amazing when
Yeah.
you
That's all
tap
you need to
into
do.
that. Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
So,
That mean that's yeah. Go ahead.
and I was going to say, so tell them really quickly, literally so super quick, because I've talked too much, what project and what people can tap into you for their kids, if they want their kids to potentially experience the pleasure, and this is a space that they may be interested in.
You better
What
do
is
it.
that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can definitely go to bshawnriley.com. We're right in the middle of launching a 4-week virtual class that teaches kids how to make jewelry. It's our first class. We're going to be launching more classes in different areas, to get kids connected to their pleasure, to their passion when it comes to igniting the gifts and the talents within them. So if you want to connect, if you have some kids that are interested in learning how to make jewelry, go to bshawnriley.com and
And
click
that's it
on
ticking. It's ticking on the scroller right there. So if you missed if you're wanting the spelling, it's
yeah.
bshawnriley.com. It's going through the ticker. Yeah.
Yep. So click on the Project Sparkle tab and sign up for info session. The info sessions are free. And then we're also going to be teaching kids how to not just how to make jewelry, but how to sell it online, um, how they can begin to develop those gifts and talents and create some cash flow and income for themselves while they're in high school. And it needs to be, it needs to be kids that really have a desire to do it. That, like we said before, if it doesn't work if you aren't passionate about it. If it's not something that you really love to do, that it does something for you. And if they want to, it may be something that they want to discover. Like, I don't know, let me see, it's also good for them to try it out as well. So bshawnriley.com, Project Spargo. That's it.
Awesome. We have a comment that I can see. So before I read the comment really quickly, and we're going to wrap up, yes, please make sure you check this out. At a minimum, go to the website and browse. And no, not at a minimum. At a minimum, go to the info session, because that's where you're going to really learn a lot more, and you can talk to Barry one on one, as well as the person who actually makes the jewelry. We do have a comment. I want to read it out loud, or actually, I'll put it on the screen for us so that we can read it together. This is the year of renewal, welcoming in the harvest and fasting during Yom Kippur. Give our time to God and reaping the bounty of His grace to enjoy the pleasure of the earth. Shalom, Kenya. Thank you for that, Yafa. I appreciate that. Yes, and I think again, this we are in harvest season, and this is a beautiful time, to really, fall is all those things we were saying earlier. And however you practice it, whether you practice it within this domain, with Yom Kippur, whether you practice it in another space, just fall harvest, however that is for you, it is a beautiful space to reflect and begin to process, and reap what you've been sowing while still though going through renewal. So thank you. I appreciate that comment. So the only last thing that I'll say before we bounce off in terms of offerings, y'all know I always got, I always got a lot of offerings, but I do I think the best way to see, and I have a new podcast, and that's probably what I'm telling everybody the most. I'm texting my friends. I'm like, y'all, I particularly texted friends this past week because the current episode, episode 4, I just loved the episode so much, is with Tosh Patterson. And she talks about creating an unapologetic life of pleasure. That is what we spend the whole time talking about, is how she went through the process of pain, of almost death, to having a very abundant, pleasurable lifestyle. And she's a pleasure coach. So that's what she does, is she coaches people to prioritize their pleasure. So make sure you listen to that podcast. If you go to this link that's going by, the link tr.ee, linktree /Kenya MJ Music, you can also just on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, any of the major podcast platforms, you just search Finding Your Voice After 40 and you'll see that episode. So make sure you tune in. If you go to that link tree, you'll see all the other goodies. Obviously, the biggest thing that I really push for pleasure is our retreats, and we do weekly info sessions. And we have something new that's going to be launched. I haven't even told Barry about this so much, but we're going to be doing a Taste of Costa Rica retreat. A taste of the retreat. We're going to be doing that coming up. You'll be hearing much, much more about that. It's a way for you to get a taste of how the retreat goes and experience the early stages of that. So stay tuned. Make sure you're a subscriber, all the things. All right. I got to bounce because I have another pleasurable activity.
Got to get your Sunday pleasure on.
I got to go get my Sunday pleasure on. I love Sundays. So, yeah. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll be back again in 2 weeks on the third Sunday. I think I actually am going to be out of town. We might have to look at that. How am I going to fit that in? We'll have to see. We may have to change that date because I'm scheduled. I'm about to turn 50, so I got a bunch of pleasurable activities en route, and I think the third Sunday is one of them. So, but we'll be back. We will be back.
All right.
All right. We'll see you guys. You hold tight, Barry. I'm going to end the broadcast. Oh, wait. I think I might have one more comment. Let me make sure. Letitia. Thank you, Letitia. So good to see you. She just gave us a heart. So, all right. We'll see you
Oh,
guys next time. Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.
peace.
Bye.